Oh man, we are so back. What's up, guys? It's Tony here. Welcome back to Man Cave Studios and episode 3 of Pits and Riffs. Today, we are going to talk about an album by an artist that I have already covered in the last episode. That is going to be the full breakdown. But before we get to that, we've got to talk about some new riffs. All right, so I basically have started these shows, in case you're not familiar, talking about some new music from other artists or just from, artists I listen to in general. And first thing we got to talk about is Time Will Heal by Volbeat. Um, the first two songs that Volbeat released from the new album are like hardcore, pedal to the metal type of metal, pun intended, I guess. This was more of a little more of a laid back song. And I don't know how well it'll be received by the Volbeat community, but I loved it. I think that if you're gonna make an album, the way that Volbeat has always kind of made their albums is that there's that nice balance between heavy and light, where they're not killing you for 48 minutes, but they're also not singing you to sleep for 48 minutes. Some people might disagree with a couple of their albums, Seal the Deal and Rewind, Replay, Rebound. Those are two that I know people didn't really take kindly to. I actually like them. I like everything that Volbeat does though, so that really doesn't make, doesn't have any impact on anything. But this song that Volbeat released, Time Will Heal, this is a fantastic song. And I think this is the one. I don't know the sequence of songs on the album yet. But the lyrics of the song I think are really powerful, and I can't really relate to them too much right now, but I feel them. Like I understand like the message that they're trying to get across. And this is actually after the fantastic song, both in name and in music, In the Barn of the Goat, giving birth to Satan's spawn in a dying world of doom. Did I get that right? I think I did. Um, Basically, this song is about, you can't force yourself to move on, right? Like, your heart will tell you when it's time to move on from something. Like, you can't just wake up after something goes wrong the next day and be okay. Like, it's going to take some time. How you move on is basically like what you kind of decide. But, you got to kind of just wait for time to go by and then you'll start to, get over it. But the heart will decide how you get over it. And, like how you move forward from that. So I love the lyrics. I love the melody of the song. What this song actually reminds me of is Garden's Tale. Fantastic song by Volbeat. I absolutely love that song. Um, it's just a ballad, It's like it also reminds me a little bit of, I know it's not an original song, but My Body off of Outlaw Gentlemen and Shady Ladies. Love that song too. It's different. It's not just the metal that people I guess have come to expect from Volbeat. But this new album I'm really looking forward to because it sounds like it's a mix of the older Volbeat stuff, like the Guitar Gangsters and Cadillac Blood type of Volbeat, and then, a little bit of the newer Volbeat. Honestly, I think this album, when it comes out, is ultimately just going to remind me of Outlaw Gentlemen and Shady Ladies, which is probably my favorite Volbeat album. So I'm looking forward to it. I want to see, what they have with the rest. I don't know. I'm recording this like 3 weeks or 2 weeks exactly before the album comes out. So I hope they haven't released another single by this point because I feel like you release 3 singles and then you just gotta like hold off and then you can just listen to the rest of the album. Hopefully I'm not behind on that, but I guess we'll see. Um, but just a fantastic song, Time Will Heal, and I am very much looking forward to the album. In terms of other riffs, nothing to report. Nothing that's come out from the artists that I enjoy, but I am told that this band that I listen to called Anchor, who their music was featured in my trailer for the season and is going to be featured again later in this season. They've got some new music coming relatively soon. I don't think they've made it necessarily public yet when that will be, but they kind of have at the same time. And I can't tell you how I know or what I know, but I hear that there is some new Anchor music coming out at some point. So I have had this theory for a long time that Spirit Box in the fall is going to tour. I shouldn't say a long time, but I have a theory that in the fall, Spirit Box is going to do another tour. They are, I think, touring in, not touring, but they're going on some like festivals. They're playing some festivals and stuff. Of course, their website now is showing me that they're not, but I know they are. Um, yeah, so they're doing an EU tour now. After that, they are coming back July 4th. They're doing something in Milwaukee. And then they're playing at another festival in September. So what I think is going to happen, because Anchor just also announced a tour in the EU and UK in later this year in November, I am still holding out hope that that means that Spirit Box is bringing Anchor to the United States sometime in September. We're going to talk about another band that just announced a September tour earlier the week that I'm filming this. So I'm still holding out hope for a Spirit Box and Anchor tour to be announced hopefully in the next month or so. Hopefully, actually, by the time that this comes out. If it's been released, like if that's knowledge now that they're touring by the time that this comes out, just know that I am ecstatic and I am very much hoping to see that. Yeah, but new music apparently coming at some point. Can't wait. Maybe already out. I don't know. I don't think so, but I don't know for sure. Anyways, those are all for the new riffs for now. A lot of my favorite artists are going on tour again, and we'll talk about that later. But for now, we have to talk about the album today. The album today is called Psychedelicatessen by Threshold. Now, on the original channel, the Pits Riffs channel, I made my last podcast episode on Legends of the Shires. Well, we're going to the first album that Glenn Morgan was on, which is Psychedelicatessen. Hence the name of the title of today's podcast. What does it mean? I don't know. A delicatessen is a deli, but you've got the word psychedelic in there. So I am led to believe that we're talking about like delis on drugs or something. Um, I don't know, but that is not at all what this album is. So I was going to a backstory of the album first before I start talking about it track by track. The backstory is that Threshold started as I think a Rat cover band, which is very prevalent in their early work. It's very gent-like, which is kind of describes Rat a little bit. Not entirely. If you're talking about gent, it's more, progressive stuff. But Rat is a lot like Metallica, just straight up heavy from start to finish. Um, so Threshold, as a Rat cover band, makes their own music. It's progressive. It sounds to me at first like a mixture of Rush and Dream Theater, and then having seen that they were a Rat cover band, that sort of registered with me. Okay. Then with this album, they decided to just go full metal. Glenn Morgan joins the band. He sounds a lot like James Hetfield at this point. So we've basically got Metallica, but a progressive version of Metallica. And they drop maybe one of the most metal and most underrated albums ever with this album, Psychedelicatessen. So here's the crux of the album, right? And you'll start to hear it in the first track. Sunseeker is the name of the first song in this album. It's the first part of a three-part story. So it goes Sunseeker, Tension of Souls, Into the Light, and then the same themes from these three songs get revisited later and then at the end of the album. So Sunseeker is the first part of the story. The main character is this guy who, kind of looks around and sees like, okay, I've spent all this time worshiping religion, and wasting my time in a sense. This album appealed to me a lot when I was in high school and thought I was atheist. Turns out I'm agnostic, which is not the same as atheism. I wouldn't have known that as a 17-year-old. But this song is basically like the opening to it all, right? It's about this guy who sort of discovers that his religion is not entirely telling the truth, and he starts to break away, right? He cuts the strings from himself and his religion. He has free will now. It's sort of this optimistic song. He's looking down on the people that still believe in, like tarot cards and things like that, and, sacred cows and things, just things that, if you think about it, it's just like not, it doesn't make any coherent sense. And so he sort of says, like, you can't be serious. Like, this is not for me. Tension of Souls, which is the next song, now we get a little bit deeper into it at this point, right? We get into the part of the album where it's, you know, more about the fight between the main character and the religion, just religion in general. His religion is obviously Christianity, the religion that's being mentioned repeatedly in the song, because, and you'll see in the next song, the lyrics start to really like single out Christianity. Um, this song, Tension of Souls, is basically about, turning his back on religion and on God, and now he's sort of unsure how to live his life. So, on the one hand, he's happy that he's free from the pressures of religion. He has free will. He's, able to kind of believe what he wants, do what he wants, but now he lacks direction. He's completely existentialist, so which it sort of drives him mad because now he sort of realizes his life means nothing really. Which is, as I would call myself an existentialist myself, sure, it's something that you have to come to terms with. It's pretty heavy. Um, there's, but then he kind of looks at religion and he sees, and it's like there's sort of this, you know, idea that what are we doing actually? Like people are kind of frustrated with with how their religion treats them. People are frustrated with how, you know, they're reading the same book in theory, but people believe in completely different things, which is, if you live in the United States, it's very prevalent because you've got the Bible Belt, which are the people that are typically Republican and, take some parts of the Bible literally, but ignore the parts that are about, love thy neighbor. And then you've got, the people from the northern parts of the country who believe in the Bible, but miss a lot of the point of the whole thing, and try to pass off things that aren't at all in the Bible or part of religion in general as religion. Which so you sort of have the less whatever you sort of have two people that don't, or two groups of people that don't, I think, fully understand their own religion. So this song is really just about, breaking away from all of that and seeing like the frustration, but being like glad that he has free will. But that's not the end of it, right? Because he still has this sort of sadness. He's lost, and that brings you into the third song on the album, which is Into the Light, which is a 10-minute song basically about becoming enlightened. Looking around and seeing like you don't know what comes next. No one really does. The same way like people who practice religion don't fully understand what it means. People who practice religion will invoke their interpretation of the Bible. Meanwhile, the Bible is not made to be interpretable. It's made to be a strict set of code for others. Um, it depends on what you believe, but the fact that people try to pass things off as like this is God's will or this is God's will or that's not what that means. There's a great little, snippet of audio in the song what's it called? Not Glass Prison, but it's off of that same album. Off of 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence, The Great Debate by Dream Theater, where it's, this person who's arguing against in vitro fertilization, and they say that it's not God's will. And the first time I heard that, I was like, who the hell told you that? How do you know what God's will is? So basically, this is about 7 years before that album was released. But this album is, people will say like, oh, this is what the Bible means, or this is what this religion practices, and if you don't believe in this, you're going to hell. And then other people who are like, no, it's this. And then, it's this whole back and forth, which you hear about it every day in the news, and you probably did back in 1994 when this album was released. Um, Specifically, this song mentions Jesus, a voice that has not spoken for over 2,000 years, a jealous benefactor, and a yardstick full of fears. People have these sort of fears about what people should and shouldn't be doing in the name of religion. I know I'm reading right from the Genius page, but I wrote this, so I guess I'm not plagiarizing. But particularly with topics, like abortion, right? If you have, there's a group of people who think that abortion should be legal, that there's nothing wrong with it, and then there's a group of people that say it's wrong. The Bible doesn't mention abortion in any context at all, good or bad. So I don't know how people think like that there's any sort of religious implications. If you don't believe that it's good, fine. If you do, fine. But there's no religious overlap really here. So you're free to have your own opinion, but this just gives religion a bad name. And I think that's a little bit of what this song is saying. It's not talking specifically about abortion, but it's talking about people that try to invoke religion when they don't really understand it. Even though they practice it and they preach it, they don't really understand it. And there's a really good line in the song. There are a few really good lines, but I am both truth and lies. Religion can be composed of things that are actually true, that are actually false, but people don't really know. Um, a lot of it, like how the universe was created, it's obviously been proven false. What is said in the Bible versus what is true. So people, kind of either follow that off a cliff or try to adapt to it and say the Bible is supposed to be about, not necessarily the exact story of how the universe was created, but a sequence of, morals that people should live by. Uh, how do so it doesn't really matter. The point of the song is that it doesn't really matter what you believe because you're kind of missing the point. There's no way to tell what the point actually is. Um, and this is sort of this, most of the song is this battle between like the metaphorical devil and the main character. And then it starts to, be revealed at a certain point that, okay, it's this battle between the main character, the devil, and God, and you don't know which is which. There is this really great sequence in the song, you know, where is it? I was there at the beginning and I'll be there at the end. I'm your secret enemy and your fair weather friend. Help yourself to all my gifts and my seductive charms. Sign your name in blood and give me all your love. With me or against me, I still have no need of faith. Ignorance is no excuse. Not one of you is safe. As I control the selfishness that keeps you all in line, you're running out of time because I control your minds. Who does that sound like? Because this could be either, really. And so the verse ends with the line, "Don't you see, it don't matter what you believe." Because it really doesn't, because you don't know if this is like a good thing or a bad thing. Your mind is being held a certain way so that you believe in this religion and you have to believe in all the things that come with it, but you don't really know what your religion is preaching and practicing, which is kind of the point of the song. You don't know what the point is. So that's the end for now. For now, that is the end of the series of songs about religion. The next song is a little. Let's not even sugarcoat it. This song is about having sex with the wrong person and the repercussions afterwards. There's obviously a lot of regret on the part of the main character of this song. Um, you know, this person kind of goes through this period of their life and they let their desire get the best of them and then they regret it later, um, and they still can't stop thinking about the sequence. But this is a little this song is entirely about sex, so let's skip over this one. The next song is, I think, amazing. It's basically this happy, sort of lighthearted, piano song, and like if you listen to this and you don't speak English, then it just sounds like a great song that you might hear at the end of a coming of age movie of some sort. Uh, it's not. It's absolutely not. If you don't listen to the lyrics, you can live through your life and listen to the song in blissful ignorance. But this is a song entirely about existentialism. It's just a happy song about existentialism. Everything is meaningless. Nothing is actually, has any sort of value in life. But people carry on until they die. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You can have the entire world and you can make everybody's lives miserable except for your own, whose you can make better. But when you die, you decay at the same rate that absolutely everybody else does until ultimately a major catastrophic event happens or the sun explodes and the planet's destroyed. So at the end of the day, nothing actually means anything. So we're coming a little bit back to the theme of the first three songs of the album, where you've still got a little bit of that existentialism. Not a little bit, a lot of it, but that's only a small part of the first three songs. Um, but yeah, it's a nice, light-hearted song about life being meaningless. Um, we kind of revisit this theme This is almost like a prelude to the next song, because this is about a little bit about the wealthy and the elite kind of using the resources to build a better life for themselves, but then ultimately like that life doesn't mean anything, because they die in the end. Everybody dies, and they're left with nothing. You are born with nothing and you die with nothing, basically. So the next song is called Babylon Rising. And this is my favorite song off the album, because this is just full on heavy metal. And it's also the closest thing to a revolutionary battle song until I think Uprising by Muse, which is funny because Threshold actually covered Muse a little over a decade later. They covered Supermassive Black Hole. It was one of the bonus tracks on Dead Reckoning. I think it was Dead Reckoning. Um, but it's sort of this concept of like this Babylonian concept of, this was a city where people were kind of exploited. This was like an early example of capitalism. The concept of, if you work hard enough, you could be rich, that you hear all the time now, especially in capitalist countries, about, oh, people need to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. What are they doing? Like, you could be rich too if you would just try hard enough. Sort of like out of touch with this, with the realization that, okay, no, that's not the case. There are plenty of people that work hard. You know, not everybody can be rich, right? People live their entire lives and have no shot at being rich ever. Um, just because they don't have the resources. I mean, you can't have everybody being rich, otherwise nobody would be rich. But it would be a little better if, the wealth could be shared a little bit more with people that need it, as opposed to people who, run around and, as is mentioned in the previous song, build themselves these giant houses and parks, have all the silver and gold. They're kings. They've got these big treasures. Um, but this is more about like, this is more of a sort of revolutionary song, right? Um, the concept here is like, all right, you've got these people that call people who say that they make too much money sinners, right? Um, this was sort of, you know, as the song kind of goes on, it's kind of revealed that like the band, or at least, the main character of the song believes that like, all right, you have had your time. This is enough. Like, you don't deserve all of this. There are people like suffering here. People, and then you've got the rich people who are religious who invoke, oh, this is wrong. You're a sinner if you believe that anything I've done is wrong. Meanwhile, there are pretty much the actual sinners because they're taking from poor people to line their own pockets. But they're basically these people that, they've done all of this bad stuff. Um, Anyone who thinks that, the wealthy elite who are destroying the planet should be punished are kind of labeled as insane. Businessmen and money spinners. I don't want to use the word, but there's a word there. The earth for gain. They don't like my ideas. They label me insane. Because the idea being mentioned here is, sharing the wealth a little bit more, not, buying these private jets and having these massive treasure troves while people are suffering. Um, yeah, but this is a fantastic song. Everything about this song is fantastic. From the meaning to the music, I just love all of it. Um, he is, I am. Now we return to sort of the theme from before, and I think this could be kind of a prequel to the first three songs because this is all about joining religion and sort of sacrificing your individuality for someone else to kind of tell you what to believe or think. So if you look closely at your religious beliefs, all that you find in the end is that you believe what you want to believe, not what the religion is actually supposed to be preaching. So people will preach what they want to believe about religion while ignoring the parts they don't want to believe. All the while, the people that choose to believe in those people are sacrificing their own individuality to kind of, be part of something, or I guess because they feel like it's their best path to a good afterlife. Um, but yeah, all the lyrics of the song are about basically just sacrificing your individuality. Until ultimately the guy sort of walks away from all of it. Sort of just takes a look around and then kind of realizes like, okay, this is dumb to just associate yourself um with this religion that maybe not dumb to associate yourself with a religion, but to associate yourself with a religion that you can't think outside the box, right? Like you've got to think along these specific sets of guidelines that are made up by people who have no idea what the prophet was preaching or what God's will actually is, going back to that whole concept from earlier in the album. Um, but yeah, this is another good song, but it's also a segue to the next one, which is probably my second favorite song off the album. It's called Innocent. I can't really relate to the lyrics too much, but it's a fantastic song melodically. It's basically just a pure breakup song about a man who's kind of been betrayed by a woman, who is now seemingly telling everyone that it was his fault that the relationship they were in turned south. He sort of wants to admit that nothing was his fault, that he did everything right, or at least, the same as she did. So he doesn't need any of this, right? He wants to just kind of walk away at this point, um, but at the same time wants that sort of closure, So the chorus of the song is, take my life away or give back the answer you hold, tell people the actual truth and admit it to yourself that what I did was not any worse than what you did. It says in the song, I did no wrong, but at the very least I would assume we're kind of on equal footing here. Which also kind of goes back to the earlier song, Will to Give, which is, it might be even about the same person, you never know. But what it sort of reminded me of were the lyrics. Where were they? Um, I can't find them from Will to Give, which is funny because there aren't that many lyrics to the song. Um, yeah, here it is. But I can't talk. No, I can't talk. I try to hide myself from shame and try to share the blame for what I've done. What have I done? Trying to share the blame. You get it. The blame goes both ways. And I think that's kind of the same thing with Innocent. The blame should go both ways, or at the very least, the blame should be taken a little bit more by the other person from that relationship. It wasn't all just the guy's fault. I don't know what relationship is necessarily being discussed here. That's just what I kind of take from the lyrics of the song. Then we get to the final actual song that's part of the album that's not a bonus track, Devoted. So this is a perfect song to end on, in my opinion, because the theme of the album generally is about turning away from the groupthink of religion. By this point, the main character in, you know, is obviously this is obviously by this point another loose concept album, and the main character is he's obviously almost entirely given up on religion. He's sort of, accepted that he's moved toward the light, which might seem a little dark, but you know, you fear this sort of void, which are the lyrics of the song, because you kind of see giving up on religion as a sort of dark path, but he's actually just getting closer to the light, to being enlightened, to realizing that religion as it exists, as people preach it, is wrong in some ways. Um, Despite how painful it is, he's, walked away from it entirely. But the song ends with these lyrics. Now I can see you, you're not there. Fog of existence fills the air, which I think is referring to religion in general. I can't matter now. I've lost, or I can't matter now. I found art of the freedom, safe and sound. When I feel that hope is lost, only the devoted know the cost. So basically, you know, I understand that I don't really matter. I have this freedom to do and think and say what I want, as opposed to having my mind held this way, which are, lyrics that they bring back in a couple of albums. I think in Clone, I would have to hold your mind this way, but that's referring to something entirely different off of, I want to say Goodbye Mother Earth, but maybe Life's Too Good. I don't remember. Um, and then the last is, when I feel that hope is lost, like when I feel that, um, you know, life is not doing me any favors, at least I know at the end of the day that I have my freedom. The people who are devoted to the religion don't really understand, what they're doing, but in the end, they will know like the cost of having given up their freedom, um, because it's basically cost them their lives. So it's a very deep and dark album. So I am sorry for bringing that upon you. But then there are also these bonus tracks too, which the first one is Lost, which is sort of another breakup song about not wanting to really feel bad about, a breakup. Intervention, which is redone from the album Wounded Land with Glenn Morgan now as a singer. It's about the genocide in Srebrenica in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and how kind of distant it seemed from somebody living far away. And actually, I watched a documentary about this after listening to the song, and it's just horrific what actually happened there. But, it's this song that's, it's been a long time since a bomb has dropped on, England, basically, is what it's talking about. It says Northern Sky, but England. So it's hard to believe that, these atrocities are happening at any point, at any sort of place in the world, let alone another country in Europe. Um, and then there's Fist of Tongues, which is sort of the same thing as Innocent, and then a little bit of Will to Give, where, it's a person who makes many missteps and has followed them down a dark road. This sort of reminds me of a song that you might see like on Extinct Instinct. It reminds me a lot of Exposed, but the person's life is worse off as a result, and the people who used to support that person are gone because of it. So their life is, in utter chaos. And the main character, the person who's narrating it, is angry. And then there's Halfway Home, which is about going out and actually doing and not just philosophizing, which is what Threshold does a lot of too. But, life is short and it feels like the end is coming quickly, or at least, feels like you're halfway home, by the time you're 30, I guess, which is what they probably were at the time. But once you get to a certain point, you have to finally go out and do and live. So yeah, that is Psychedelicatessen by Threshold. So let's talk about some riffs in a pit near you, or soon in a pit near you. Some riffs that you'll hear. Um, a new tour was just announced a couple weeks ago by this point called the Parasomnia Tour. or Parasomnia tour, I think. I don't know if they actually call it that. But this is a tour that Dream Theater has been touting since basically the North American leg of their 40th anniversary tour started. They said pretty early on that they hoped by the end of the year that they would be playing the full Parasomnia album live. See, I think every band should do this. If you release an album, you should play the whole thing live. I wish they would have done this with Distance Over Time because I love that album so much. It's in the background of like a good amount of videos on this channel. Whenever I'm, facing the camera that way and it's coming this way, you can see it in the background. It's right over here. Love that album so much. Unfortunate that I only got to see like 3-4 songs off of it. But I love Parasomnia too. It's not up there with Distance Over Time for me, but I love that album. And I'm going to be the first person to see those songs live because they are starting that tour in Reading, Pennsylvania, which is the closest to my house, I think. Either that or Nassau Coliseum in New York in late October, where the tour ends. I'm not going to that one because I have work that day. So I'm going to Reading, Pennsylvania to see that concert. So that should be a fun concert all around. And I hope they play everything sequentially. I think they will. But that is an album that's meant to be played like how they've been playing Scenes from a Memory and other tours, where they just play it straight through. I think that's what they're going to do with Parasomnia. At least that's what I hope they're going to do. The great thing too is that this is a 71-minute album. They haven't announced an opening act, so I feel like this is going to be, if you remember that DVD that Devin Townsend released, maybe like a decade ago at Royal Albert Hall, where he did the Dark Matter set, and then he did a set of, the songs that everybody likes to hear. So that's what I'm hopeful for. I hope they'll play Parasomnia in the first set, and then they'll play, a bunch of hits during the second set. And again, I am very, very thankful. I'm always thankful. I've never been, until February, I never got to see a tour on its first stop. So, I've always had to go out of my way to avoid setlist spoilers. But I don't have to do that here because they're playing a bunch of festivals in Europe this summer, which is obviously not going to be the same set that they're playing in the United States in the fall, or in the late summer, early fall. So I'm not going to know what they're going to play in the second set. And it might be fun. It might be the first time they've played some songs in years. That's what I'm hoping for, at least. At least I thought that about Octavarium when they played that live, and it turns out they played that in Europe. So maybe this will be actually playing certain songs for the first time. They did play one song for the first time since 2010 during that tour, that they didn't play in Europe, but I don't remember what it was. It was cool to see though. I was the first person to see Midnight Messiah live, so yay. Aside from that, God of Angels Trust by Volbeat is coming out on Friday. I cannot wait for that album. I'm going to post a review on the blog shortly after. I might even do a live stream of my reaction as well. But the blog review will be here. You will be able to read it here. Hopefully, I think it will be better than the Ghost album review, because from the singles that Volbeat has released, I like how this album is sounding so far. So let's hope it's sort of the same thing. Anyways, that is going to be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I don't know what album I'm going to review next, but I think I should take a little bit of a break from Threshold. I need to do some Dream Theater at some point, and I probably should do Spirit Box or something. So that might be the next couple of episodes after this. I don't know about the upload schedule for Pits and Riffs either. On the old channel, it was Mondays, every other Monday. I'm gonna try to make it the same here, or at least similar. So we'll see. But anyways, thank you guys very much for watching, and peace out, broskies.